We're live. Hello, welcome to today's WrestleMania 40 preview. I am joined straight away by the one, the only, Mr. Dan Hargreaves from Gimme Hoyer, and we are going to be discussing everything WrestleMania tonight. You've had the flashy intros, you've had me reading and catching me reading Becky Lynch's new autobiography, available in all good bookshops, not endorsed or like sponsored in the show, but good book anyway. So get yourself reading it if you want something, and look out for a review. I'm sure it'll come later on. I'm keen to hear though, how the devil are you, Mr. Hargreaves?
I'm not doing too bad. I've had a steady day at work, but wrestling-wise, Monday Night Raw, probably the best Raw we've had since before the pandemic. So you're talking a good 3-4 years worth of mediocre to good shows, but Monday night was an absolute fire show.
I couldn't agree anymore if I tried. I think that's the best place to start. We are going to be talking about WrestleMania, but we are officially on that road to WrestleMania that we always talk about. And as Dan just said, Monday Night Raw, possibly, and I have seen it in other streams and podcasts described as the best Raw ever. It certainly has to be up there with a shout. It was full of energy. Like, there wasn't too many matches, not too much wrestling. So if that's the kind of thing, maybe not for you. But I thought the matches that we did get were very good, zipped along. You know, there was one that was very short, as in the Candice LeRae Ivy Nile match. Even that had a reasoning for doing it. Everything seemed to have a purpose. Something that we maybe missed along the way when it comes to WWE is everything seemed to be done for a reason. Everything seemed to interconnect. And the way it was kind of presented is a way that we've been hoping for years. So I agree with everything that Dan said. But in particular, Dan, what was it? What do you think it was that made this past Monday Night Raw just so damn good?
I don't think you can put a finger on one thing because there was just everything. Everyone seemed to take their game up to the next level. The promos were absolutely fire. Drew, Punk, and Seth just absolutely knocked out the park.
Yeah.
You had matches like Jey Uso versus Nakamura, which had its reasoning. You had Sami Zayn versus Big Bronson Reed, Ivy Nile versus Candice LeRae, you just alluded to. Ricochet versus JD McDonough for a Raw match was an absolute fire match. And if you gave them a 15-minute pay-per-view match, they could do absolute wonders.
Mm.
The ending segment with Cody and The Rock showing up on Monday Night Raw, that last segment with The Rock just absolutely tearing Cody a new one, absolutely brilliant. So I don't think there was one thing that was changed or one thing that made it stand out. It was just every single thing on that show just seemed to be elevated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it all feels like it exists in the same universe now. Whereas I think we've said like last week or the week before when we were talking about it, previously it feels like everything was compartmentalized and like this match was its own thing and this match was its own thing and never should the two things meet in the middle. Whereas now we're seeing like those camera shots of following, like I think it was last week, Sami Zayn through the curtain, and then you see the tag team, like the match that was coming up next, those guys getting ready just outside Gorilla, and then you kind of pass through and they're like, Sammy, you okay? And he just kind of storms past, and like then it stops there and you hear their conversation. So like realistically and logistically, things start making more sense. Like it would be like having different Marvel characters and they never interact because they have their own battle to fight. Whereas they all, you know, live in New York or fight in New York, and then they never like interact with each other. It would sound crazy. And that's what it's been for years. But now it seems to be actually the Jey Uso versus Nakamura match is integral to how Cody was out there and then got ambushed by The Rock eventually. So like all those pieces need to move together rather than in separate transitions. So yeah. I thought that to me is the big difference that we're seeing on Raw.
It's becoming a seamless show, I think, because they are having the cameras interacting with two different parts of different stories.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it's all part of a single entity.
Yeah.
And one thing is interacting and affecting another thing a lot more than individual stories, and there's no crossover. And I think that's what's working so well.
Yeah, and then we also see like the matches that we did have were predominantly for people that haven't got a match at WrestleMania. Now you sprinkle in the likes of Sami Zayn and Jey Uso who do, but they needed those stories or those matches to further their story. Whereas you then get people like Bronson Reed and Ricochet in particular and JD McDonough who aren't involved in a match, who are going to go out and go, actually, this is why I should be on the WrestleMania card. It's not too late. Put me on there and I can deliver this. Like that Ricochet match had no business being as good. We'd seen it a couple of weeks ago, but they managed to like just elevate it to another level. So everyone's firing on all cylinders. Everyone's very focused on, even if you're not on the card, it's important that you play your part right now in WWE's programming, which probably brings us really nicely as to what we're going to be discussing tonight. And I think sometimes in previous years, WWE could be accused of maybe phoning it in a little bit in the build up to WrestleMania. You don't want to take any chances, any risks, and it all kind of gets a bit formulaic. Whereas this year, we're going to be discussing a lot of matches where we might have seen similar things before. Maybe this is like a brand new thing. And we're going to get into a lot of different talking points. So what we're going to try and do is keep this as succinct as we can, because as with WrestleMania, it is a 2-night event, and it's going to be happening next weekend. We will go into some details throughout and at the end as well, where we talk about how you can catch up with the guys from Give Me a Hoya and the things we've got planned for WrestleMania weekend as well. Dan will talk you through that. We're also going to be joined at some point by Sam as well. Sam's going to join us for a little bit on the stream. But we thought we'd just kick it off with myself and Dan, especially after that absolute rocket of a Monday Night Raw. Dan seemed to be the absolute best placed person who stayed up until the early hours in the morning and was actually, for once, thoroughly rewarded for his patience. I feel like that kind of Raw is for people like you who have had to
slog through the rubbish.
Yes, exactly. But if that is how Raw is going to be, is this how WWE is going to be, then I think there'll be a lot more people starting to stay up again, or at least do what I do. And as soon as you wake up, you're straight away watching it. So great to see, and very, very excited to be talking about WrestleMania. I myself will be flying out to Philadelphia next Wednesday, representing both Give Me a Hoya, Wrestling Royalty, WrestleSphere, and all those good names as well. So make sure you stay across all of those channels for the latest coverage, videos, everything I possibly can do. I will be doing. I'm at a few indie shows. I'm going to pop my head into Washington DC as well. I'm not going to be the president, but I'm going to try and see his house at least. I hear it's white these days. Anyway, first match, because where else should we start than a match that maybe has been overlooked, criminally overlooked, some might say, between Io Sky and Bayley for the WWE Women's Championship. And this was one of the first matches that was actually official, because as soon as Bayley won, I think it was only the week afterwards, we found out that she was going to go against Io Sky. And we had that amazing segment on SmackDown where she'd been listening in and learned Japanese and realized that they've been kind of like talking behind her back and things like that. I thought that was fantastic.
Genius.
And they've kind of dropped the ball. What's your thoughts on that? Do you agree, or is this something that's just been kind of simmering away? What are your thoughts on Bayley versus Io Sky in the build-up?
I think after Royal Rumble, Bayley was red hot, and since then it's petered off a little bit. So hopefully tomorrow night and maybe next week we do get a little bit more of this being pushed to the forefront, because it is the women's championship. It deserves to be front and center. There is other stories going on that are probably bigger, but in terms of a longevity storyline, you've got Roman and Cody. You've got Gunther and Sami Zayn, because that's been a long title reign. And then you've got Bayley from Damage Control point, SummerSlam 2022, I think it was, that she retained with Damage Control as a faction. So it's been going on for at least 18 months that this feud has actually been building. It might have been very subtle, but it has been a very long-term storytelling and long-term booking decision that I think has been absolutely perfect.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to put this on the show, You've got two unbelievable workers. To me, I think you should be putting this on night 2, first match, get the crowd hyped up for it. That's where I'd have it on the show.
Yeah, I think if you want to make a statement, I think you're right. I think you just got to go like out the gate and put it on as one of the openers, because people will always want to go on last. But I know under Triple H, she's had that kind of mantra of follow that mother effer. And that was like prevalent in NXT. And he'd always, and in actual fact, if you go back and watch any of the NXT takeovers, often the best match of the night was actually the first match on a takeover card, and people would fight to be on it. So if Triple H really wants to reward the work that Bayley and the Io Sky put in over this damage control arc, then I do feel like putting it on first and letting the crowd, a red hot crowd, because people are going to be amped, for this WrestleMania. And I think, yes, they're slightly shorter than the likes of WrestleMania 35 when we were going for 7-8 hours in New York. Whereas here we're getting 2 shows, which are probably about 4 to 5 hours long, which personally is great because it breaks things up nicely. Everyone gets a little bit of time. It doesn't feel like you kind of clock watching too much. But yeah, definitely for me, putting these on first is so important for this moving forwards. I've just seen Dean's commented, and I really want to stress, please comment. I want to make sure that we hear what you're thinking, because we've got plenty of matches to get through, and this works so much better if we hear what you guys are thinking, and we don't just want to have our voices. But speaking of voices, someone else is ready to join us, and that is my usual partner in crime on these streams, Mr. Sam Smith. Taking it. Have you won the winning sips for McDonald's? It looks like you're on mute.
He's forgot about his microphone.
No, we had a go, but no luck. So thanks for nothing, McDonald's. But no. This match. So looking forward to this. So is this the first or the second one we've discussed, or am I way the end?
This is the first. We were having a good chat about the Red Hot Monday Night Raw that we just had, Dan being thoroughly rewarded for staying up. But we have got a couple of comments. Dean's in. He is painting, as always. You can check his Scenescape Shop channel out, where he is always putting some masterpieces on. I think he's probably listening and watching, probably just listening if he's being honest, because I don't want him to have a random brushstroke that was our fault for making some outlandish statement. But yeah, so he's not going to comment too much, but he certainly is watching along as always. So thank you very much, Dean, and make sure you check out his channel. We've got a friend of the channel, regular as well, Norma, says, "Hey Sam and Andy," and yeah, he has forgot Danny there, but I'm sure he'll get himself involved there. I wish they would make this a no DQ match. Would add a lot of pop to it. Let us know why. Why would a DQ match bring this? Because these are two very capable wrestlers or technical wrestlers, I guess. But yeah, Norma, apparently, I actually was looking right at you and said Sam's name.
We don't even look closely similar.
No, one's got a glorious beard. One is very freshly clean shaven with a baby face there. Some call him the baby face of the channel. Some may call him a heel. Some people might just call him a legend. Anyway, we've got Tom in from Tom Talks Rubbish as well. And I believe Tom's most recent interview was with one Dom Smith. There's plenty of content kicking around on social media, so make sure you check out Tom Talks Rubbish, where you can see interviews of all of us. But there is a very recent one with Head Honcho, is fair to say, for Dom Smith. And you can check out Dom's interview over on Tom's channel there as well. So thank you for joining us, mate. Hope you're having a great night as well, and looking forward to WrestleMania. So Sam, I'd rudely cut you off.
It's all right.
Io Sky versus Bayley very quickly, and then we'll move on to the next one. We've got plenty of matches to cover.
I think it's had a great build, great story. I think I said back during Elimination Chamber, didn't I? This is the story that I'm most interested in. I don't know if that's still the case, but I'm still really into it. I think both are brilliant. I've been fans of both of them for a long time. NXT particularly. I can't wait to see what happens. I think Bayley needs to win this one, but I wouldn't mind if she didn't. But I do think if this was to go on first, get the crowd hot, big babyface win. But part of me wants it to go on kind of towards the end of the card to make it feel like a bigger deal. But I do think it would be a good pop and a good WrestleMania moment for Bayley, who's really deserved that and has never really had it yet. So this could be it.
So speaking of deserved, do we have to sing? Does Tom want us to sing a happy birthday to him, or is it adequate just to say happy birthday, brother, for tomorrow? I hope you have a fantastic day. My singing voice is not great, and I don't want to scare away everyone this early into a show. If any of you guys have, a silky smooth voice, feel free.
Look, mine's absolutely beautiful, but you have to pay money for mine. So there you go.
I ain't giving over a cold.
Yeah, I ain't giving that stuff away for free. Not even to Tom.
$3.99 on OnlyFans, and he'll sing you happy birthday, I'm sure, while I don't know, touching his toes or something.
Onlyfans.dom.
But yes, Io Sky versus Bayley. I think we're unanimous in saying let's have this one open. Let's make it a big deal. But I do feel like the build had started red hot, but maybe has faded a little bit into a little bit of a mix up of what's going on. So, let's start that one off for WrestleMania for me, for Dan, for Sam, I was going to give predictions, but we'll leave them and we'll let Dan explain in a little bit what's going on with predictions for WrestleMania, because there's a lot of predictions to come on that one. So we'll let Dan explain very soon. Another one, maybe criminally undervalued, maybe confusingly added to the WrestleMania card. Sam, I'll start with you on this one, because I do feel there's a few matches on the SmackDown side of things that haven't really, I don't know, maybe been built as well as the stuff on Raw. And I would certainly have LA Knight and AJ Styles in that bracket, but they did have this kind of home invasion style thing that on Friday. LA Knight versus AJ Styles. Are you buying this, or is this one that you could happily go without?
Here's the thing: I don't think it's had a particularly brilliant build. It does feel a little bit shoehorned. It's like, oh God, we need both these two are great, right? They've both got a lot of love, but both of them had nothing to do. So they put them together. It was kind of like what they did with Bray Wyatt and Bobby Lashley last year. Now, sadly, that one didn't quite materialize. It still would have been good fun. But I think it's the same with this year. But here's the thing. I'm a big fan of both of these guys. I think they're both brilliant. And I have faith in them both to put on a really, really fun match. I don't necessarily need this to be about a title or an intricate storyline like we've had with Bayley and Io Sky. You know what? I'm happy for this just to be a fight between two guys who don't like each other. And I feel like they've done a really good job making with the redemption story of LA Knight going from a bad guy to a good guy. And, maybe they should have pulled the trigger a little bit sooner with him. But when it comes to AJ, I kind of like this current modern heel turn thing they're doing at the moment under Triple H. They're doing it with McIntyre as well. It's where you're this justified bad guy. You've been screwed over so many times, you're sick of it. And it's really old school. It's it's kind of like the territories before they had really ironed out what a heel was and that they had to cheat and things like that. Because I don't think it makes sense for AJ to cheat or anything like that in this match. I just think this needs to be a slugfest between a babyface and a heel. I do think, I don't know who will, but I think LA Knight needs to win it, because having a victory over AJ Styles at WrestleMania is a big deal. And it would help his star. So yeah, I've got no problem with it, really. Everything you said is correct. And it does feel a little bit, underwhelming. But once these two guys are stood across from each other in a stadium, I'll be into it.
Yeah. I mean, Dan, I'll ask you a similar question, though. Is like, when you go back a few months as to how red hot LA Knight actually was, especially last summer, is this underwhelming for any LA Knight fans or anyone who's kind of hoping to see something maybe a little bit more from the megastar?
I think it could be. I think, alluding to what Sam said a couple of minutes ago, last year, LA Knight was meant to be on the WrestleMania show with Bobby Lashley in some way, I think. That didn't happen, so it might be this is just to give LA Knight that WrestleMania pop, that WrestleMania payday. But yeah, it does feel a little bit shoehorned in. This, if you take away the big sort of 4 pay-per-views, this feud could be built into a main event of a B-level pay-per-view quite easily. And you've got 2 phenomenal workers that could pull off a very, very good and very intriguing last man standing match or a Hell in a Cell match. And I think that if WWE don't drag this feud out to the next pay-per-view and give them a big, big stipulation, I think they're really missing a trick on it, because LA Knight is still super hot. Maybe not as hot as against when he went against Roman. AJ Styles, again, is that really good justified heel. So they could milk this story a little bit longer, and I would not be disappointed in it. You've got 2 people that I love watching in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
So is it shoehorned in? Yes. Is it an underwhelming story? I don't think so, but I think there is still scope for a bigger match further down the line with these 2.
It wouldn't surprise me, Dan, just on the back of that. It wouldn't surprise me if on the last SmackDown they did reveal this is in a steel cage. They can still add snips to this. They might be looking at this and thinking, right, a few people are, 3 podcasters were talking crap about this. Let's stick them in a steel cage. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I don't think this is done yet. But if it is, I don't really care, because there's so much good stuff on this card. I'm just happy they're both on it.
Mm-hmm. Kyle agrees with you, Sam, that LA Knight does need to win this. But they've also said they've cooled off now, unfortunately, for all the fans who love him. To a degree, I think he still gets very good receptions when he goes out, into the crowds. I think people still are rooting for him. He hasn't lost the fans, but has somewhat cooled off, probably on purpose, because only a certain amount of people can be in the title picture at one time. I think the true makings of a superstar is who can remain hot or relevant when you're not in a title picture and wait for that moment to come back round, because we'll get into it a little bit when it comes to Cody Roman, but a title switch opens a lot of opportunities up for people like LA Knight, who have had a crack at Roman, but won't have had a crack at Cody, for example. So a draft is probably not too far in the future. So again, that's the sort of thing that can move people's positions within the roster. So never a done deal, but good to have you in. Thank you very much for commenting. Keep them coming in. Al, with the induction of Paul Heyman into the WWE Hall of Fame, it's brought me back to 2004 when one of the greatest wrestling managers ever, Bobby the Brain Weasel Heenan, was inducted. If you want to hear a little bit more about Hall of Fame, myself and Sam were talking about that on a few days ago, actually. It was on Sunday. We went through all the Hall of Fame inductees this year, including Paul Heyman. Very excited to see in Philly the Hall of Fame ceremony, and especially Paul Heyman's speech. Really looking forward to seeing who's going to induct him as well. So let me know, Al, who would you like to see Paul Heyman be inducted by? Really interested to hear your views on that. I think I agree with everything that you guys are saying about this one with LA Knight and AJ Styles. Sometimes WrestleMania is the end of a feud, sometimes it's the beginning, and now we're seeing it sometimes could be a continuation. We haven't really heard any justification as to why AJ Styles is acting the way he is. We've seen some backstage stuff with the Good Brothers and Mia Yim, but he's never really kind of explained to them why he's acting the way he is, outside of maybe you took my spot when I was away sort of thing. Is that enough justification to hit someone with a steel chair, fly all the way to Australia and cost them a title match? A long way. Like, there's people in the world that I don't really like. I don't think I'd fly that far just to get one shot at them. But
depends who it is. Sometimes,
yeah. At points in my life, maybe I would have done. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see which way they go with this. I think this is the beginning of maybe like a 2 or 3 matches. And as Dan said, could you potentially have this higher up a card at Backlash, say, because the French fans that are going to be there would eat this up. They'll be happy to have both these guys there, and maybe up the ante a little bit by having a stip in the next match, which is why they're kind of deliberately not building too much, because they want to give something to the next premium live event.
Yeah.
Just a thought. We're going to move on to the Women's World Championship match between Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch. Now, we did see a really interesting interaction on Raw this past Monday where Becky absolutely socked Dom in the face, fully caught him on the chin. I mean, he took that like an absolute boss, by the way. He sold the hell out of it. I don't think he had to do too much selling because I think he legitimately had his block rocked or cleaned.
His bell rung.
His bell rung. Oh, that's amazing pun for a Philadelphia.
Yep. I just saw the bell in front of me. I had to go for it.
You've said that on a Friday night before I hear as well. Anyway, Dan, I'm going to come to you because, again, on Monday Night Raw, we did see that interaction. What did you think? Was this a much-needed face-to-face and a little bit of altercation on Monday?
Yes. I think over the past sort of few weeks, with Becky being tied up with Nia Jax a little bit, this had got a little bit forgotten about. But Monday Night Raw really revamped it up, really got that excitement back. And I think if you're going to do something else on Monday Night Raw coming, you've got to have these two going absolutely trying to get at each other's throats, but pulled back at all costs. And I wouldn't be surprised if you could see this match in a steel cage. Try and stop some interference from Dirty Dom or any other part of the Judgment Day. I think it would work in a steel cage. You've got two absolutely brilliant performers that could make it a very intriguing match. But again, I'd be happy to just let these two go 20 minutes, go balls to the wall, and just give us a 5-star women's match.
Balls to the wall. Well, she's the man.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think Becky has to have a little bit of a chip on her shoulder, and you've got to remember last year, one of the matches that stole the show, and we were all there in LA and witnessed it, was Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley. So you have that carrot dangling that's there to be shot at. You have to beat what they did, otherwise you'll forever be known as that was the better match. And we know the animosity that's between Becky and Charlotte, and they might have buried it slightly, but you're going to tell me that someone like Becky Lynch isn't motivated by upping the ante from that match last year. I would tell you're crazy, because I think this is the match that a lot of people are maybe sleeping on at the moment, but when that bell rings, I think it's going to be phenomenal. And Sam, I'm going to come to you on this one. We are going to do predictions at a different time, but can Becky actually win this one?
I think if Bayley wins the other one, I know they don't have to do 50-50 booking, but they often do. Like, it would be a great moment for Becky, but I feel like they've both had that defining WrestleMania moment. Rhea had it last year, and Becky had it in the three-way that time. So, well, that could have been taken out of context, couldn't it? But anyway, in the Ronda Charlotte match. So, I think what's important here, and I'm going to have to do for once in my life, I'm going to have Dan versus Sam again, guys, which is always the politest argument you've ever heard. But I actually think Rhea needs to lean into turning face here a little bit, and what will get rid of Dom and want to do this on her own, because it's not about keeping the title. It's about proving she can beat Becky and proving she's the better woman. I think that's a better story. And I kind of like the idea of Becky getting a little bit dark as well and going to a bit of a savage place too. So I do think the story is what's important here. I think the match is going to be a banger, hands down. And you're dead right about Becky being motivated for her match to be better than Charlotte's match. I think that's an absolute. I never thought of it that way, but now you've said it, it's a given. But I think what might happen here is we might see Judgment Day fall apart because Dom gets involved and maybe costs Rhea. Something big has to go down here, and Judgment Day is on borrowed time. Look what's going on with the Money in the Bank briefcase. He hasn't got long to use that now. It's running out of time. Stuff is going down. I don't know what it's going to be or how it's all going to shake out, but I can't help thinking Rhea's going to be part of it, because she's the glue that holds Judgment Day together. So if she turns her back on it, it all falls apart. And she's already getting frustrated with them all. That they've been teasing that for months, bit by bit, incrementally. And I think this might be one of the places where it falls apart. And for it to really fall apart, she needs to lose the belt. So I do think Becky takes it.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll get into predictions a little bit later on in terms of what we're doing for that on Give Me a Hell Yeah. But yes, it's a weird one because I like what you said. I think maybe we need to see a bit of that darkness from Becky on the last Raw before WrestleMania, where maybe she just kind of flattens Rhea out, because we need to buy that she's got a chance. Like, we need to see that Rhea can be a little bit vulnerable, because right now she just looks like unbeatable. And maybe having that seed planted on Raw where actually Becky can, like, you get her a little bit and see that. Maybe that's what we need on Raw, because we've got a few shows left. We've got 2 SmackDowns and a Raw. They can still do a little bits and pieces they need to tidy up the edges, because as Dan said at the beginning, Becky's been distracted a lot by the stuff with Liv or with Nia Jax. She had that last one standing match last week. So this was a much needed focus on Monday Night Raw, but I am looking forward to this. I think it'll be an absolute classic for the women's division, and maybe just one of those ones, hopefully, when it comes to doing the end of year show, we all mention this as one of the matches that we very much enjoyed.
I also think as well, Rhea wins clean quite a lot. Unlike the rest of Judgment Day, she generally wins clean. So I think Dom might become a bit of a distraction and more of a hindrance than a help here. I think that's a really interesting thing to kind of look into. But anyway, let's go to the next one.
Yeah. So we're going to go to a triple threat match here, or 3-way, as Sam called them in the last one. Kevin Owens versus Randy Orton versus Logan Paul for the United States Championship. Again, another SmackDown match with a bit of a strange build, because it hasn't been plain sailing. I think at one point we were maybe going to get LA Knight versus Logan Paul. And then we were very much in the case of Randy Orton versus Logan Paul because of what happened at Elimination Chamber. And then they threw in Kevin Owens as a good mix. Now, who should I come to? Dan, did they throw Kevin Owens here? Because Kevin Owens is kind of someone you can't leave off. And this just seemed to be the best spot for him. Or am I missing something?
I don't know. I think he could be in there to try and take a few big bumps, because obviously we know Randy's not long back from a quite horrific injury that he's had a lot of rehab, 18 months out. So it could be there to try and help Randy not take anywhere near as many big or unnecessary bumps. Kevin Owens known for putting his body on the line. He's jumped off of WrestleMania stands before today, so he has got no problem putting his body on the line to try and help someone look good. And I think Logan Paul is someone that he is great in the ring to start with, but having Kevin Owens there to bump for him is going to make him look even better. Having Randy there as the experience is going to help Logan Paul no end. And having both of them together working with Logan Paul, probably rehearsing the match right now, all the way through until WrestleMania, I think it's going to help. I mean, I'll let people know I was never a Logan Paul fan, but his matches have impressed me, and he's had to think on the fly on a few occasions, and he's done very well, and I am starting to enjoy and watch him. He's not bad on the mic, but Kevin Owens being put into this match, I think it's there to help Randy as much as Logan Paul. I don't think he's there just by chance.
No, that's a great point. I hadn't really thought about. Is obviously Randy's back. We see him at the moment selling a lot of his that back injury. Elimination Chamber, his selling was off the charts. Like, I think people were legitimately concerned that maybe he'd come back too soon. Maybe this is it for him, and maybe it is. Maybe there is a little bit of pain there that will never go away, and he's kind of just having to tidy up and get through what he needs to get through for now. And Kevin Owens absolutely can help with that. We also technically Kevin Owens should get a rematch because he was kind of screwed out of it the way that his US title match went in Australia, I think it was.
Rumble DQ.
Yes. And then Logan Paul, let's remember, he had a great match against Seth Rollins in LA last year. And this one does feel like it's kind of an evolution from that. Like maybe that one was a little bit more sort of cartoony, and KSI was involved in the giant prime bottle, whereas this one is very much sort of, yeah, you've made it, kids. You're on the WrestleMania card out of talent because you've shown over the last year that you can hang with people. And I do feel like this match was centered around the kind of virality, I don't know if that's a word, of Logan Paul taking an RKO, because that was a big like meme that was going around a little while back, and then Logan Paul is obviously always looking for a viral moment. But Sam, I'll come to you. Logan Paul, like, what are your thoughts now? We've kind of discussed it here and there, and Normal just put in a comment as well where he says he's a big Logan Paul fan, used celebrity status to get into WWE, but he's put in the work to turn into a legit superstar. The fact he's in a triple threat with these guys says a lot. Can you disagree with anything that Normal said there?
Nope. I think the word is virulence. I could be wrong there, but I was thinking as well, though, which was the bloody word for that? But yeah, I hate not knowing words. But I'm a huge fan of Logan Paul. I've said this so many times on the podcast. I don't know much about him outside of wrestling. I know he's a dude with a YouTube channel and had a controversy in Japan. But other than that, like, as far as being a wrestler goes, I think he's great. I'm yet to see a tangible argument as to why he's not. So it is what it is. I think here, I think you're right with the Kevin Owens thing, because I've kind of wondered, surely a one-on-one with Randy Orton beating the crap out, the snot out of this kid, and then taking his belt off him is a great WrestleMania moment. And so I did wonder. I love Kevin Owens, but I did wonder why he was in it. And Dan has now told me why, and I think that's exactly it. So I just want to say, by the way, I don't know if it was on SmackDown last week where Logan Paul was all cocky and Randy and Kevin walked off together. Then Kevin came back and just smacked him in the mouth and went, "Hey, Randy, I did it!" Like that. That was absolutely hilarious. And I love the childlike but violent Kevin Owens. That facet of his character, I think that's absolutely brilliant. But here's the thing. Here's one thing I've noticed. Kevin Owens and Randy Orton are, other than Triple H, are probably the two biggest betrayers in all of WWE. And at the moment, they're best buddies. So this isn't the story of the Scorpion and the Frog that I'm so fond of. This is the story of the Scorpion and the Scorpion. And I part of me loves the idea of Randy standing tall over Logan Paul, because Logan's got other things to do. But them not getting along might be the story here, and might be the thing that causes Logan Paul to retain. Because part of me always assumed Logan Paul was losing here to Randy or whoever he was in with. But now that they're doing this whole other friends thing and they're going to go and beat him up together, I'm not so sure anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, well, they've got a tag team match on SmackDown, haven't they? Which presumably will be that one where they kind of start to fall apart. We see a little bit of a chink in the armor, and that relationship or friendship kind of go by the wayside on the way into WrestleMania. And I do believe that will be the start of it. Because is it Randy Orton and Kevin Owens versus Theory and Waller? Or no, it can't be, because they've got a championship match, haven't they? Like a tournament thing.
I'm not sure. I think I need to look. And Dan mentioned in the comments there Logan Paul's size. I think he's about 6 foot something. I think he's. I think when you stood next to Randy Orton, everyone looks tiny. So.
Kevin Owens and Randy Orton versus Pretty Deadly.
Yeah,
Pretty deadly, yeah.
Pretty Deadly. Yes, they're two tall lads as well.
Yeah, randomly you don't kind of see them as being that tall, but when you stand next to them, you're like, actually, yeah, I'm either a short 6 foot or you're a very tall 6'2".
Yeah. I was a bit surprised, but when we were chatting to him, I was a little bit. That's my dog on the wood floor. Cheers, yes. I was surprised by how tall they both were, but yeah, I vote for Randy Orton, Hassan says. We're not on SmackDown now, Hassan, but we might be soon.
Cool. But yeah, a triple threat match. I think this will be a great match. I think this is one of those ones that's probably going to have quite a few spots in it where the fans will get like a good buzz and the stadium will come alive a little bit. So it wouldn't surprise me to see this somewhere in the middle of the show on one of the nights, just to really kind of pep up the crowd, let them kind of just rain the hate down on Logan Paul, and then maybe they get in each other's way and Logan Paul sneaks out because they just couldn't quite decide who was going to be the one who kind of wins it, and that's how he gets out. But Normals reckon it's going to be a buckshot barrier onto KO and Orton simultaneously. Is that his finisher? I feel like
I think his finisher is the knockout punch.
Yes.
Yeah.
He just does the lariat to troll Hangman Page, I think, at this point. But that's all I've got, I'm afraid.
True. Right. I do promise the things that we're talking about will ramp up into the ones that have been kind of like have had more of a build. Because I'll start this one off. Jimmy versus Jey Uso should have been one of the hottest matches that we were all like massively excited about. Whereas I feel like this has just kind of been like, these guys are fighting, they're brothers, that's the story, crack on. I feel like there's stipulation out of every match that there's been announced. This is the one that needs stipulation because this is going to be two guys with exactly the same moveset, just doing super kicks, Samoan drops, and that all that kind of stuff. But yeah, for me, I think something needs to be added here. And I personally believe SmackDown this Friday is the show they have to build this on. They are getting low on chances to build anticipation for this match. Dan, what are your anticipation levels like for Jey versus Jimmy?
I think out of every match on the card that I've had a look at, this is the one where I should have a lot of interest in it, but I just feel there hasn't been enough of a story booked together. If you remember WrestleMania 25 off the top of my head, you had the Hardys going against each other. They had a lot of story and a lot of backstory going into that. So when the match actually happened, it was very hyped. There was stuff about, was it Matt killing Jeff's dog in a fire or something, if I remember rightly?
He set his house on fire. And
set his house on fire, dog died.
Pyro nearly blew up in his face and stuff like that.
There was a lot to make that a literal blood feud. And we've obviously got the Bloodline having a blood feud, and it's an internal one with Jey and Jimmy. So could you have done a lot more? Yes. Have you got time to make it feel like it should be an absolute grudge match? You've got 2 weeks. You could do stuff on Monday Night Raw as well because Jay's a Monday Night Raw guy. You could have Jimmy show up, cost him a match, and then have an absolute brawl. You could have Jay turn up on SmackDown, cost Jimmy the match, and have the same thing again. You could have, maybe not to the length that Cody and The Rock went, but you could have them go backstage and have a proper brawl, throw the crowd, whatever you want, and it'd get people a bit more excited about it. But I don't think there's enough excitement in there for me. Out of every match on the card, this is the one I'm least looking forward to, when I should be super hyped about two brothers fighting at this level.
Which is interesting because Miplet 2002 says this is the match they're excited for. And I'd love to know why. Is it the kind of intriguing brother versus brother? Because as they said, we've only had a couple of those matches at WrestleMania before. We've had the Hardys and we've had the Hearts as well. So this isn't something we see very often. And with all the build that the Bloodline had last year, it then got a little bit muddy as to why Jimmy flip-flopped back onto Roman's side. This, to me, actually feels like they need a massive heart-to-heart promo rather than like physicality, because it's the story we need to hear as to, we need to know Jimmy's reasoning why, because Jey has always been kind of respectful, going like, I moved away. I didn't want anything to do with you because like you broke my heart. Like you stabbed me in the back when I had my opportunity. Jimmy's never really explained his rationale behind going back. So to me, like, it needs to be Jimmy led. I personally feel like Jimmy's the one who's got to do it because Jay's really over with the crowd. He's the overwhelming fan favorite here, but Jimmy's got every opportunity here to completely fade into obscurity. And you've also got that factor of Solo Sikoa. Like, what is he going to do here? Because he's their brother as well. So do we see some hijinks with Solo? I don't know. Sam, what do you reckon? What do we need here? What injection of something do we need to get these guys to everyone excited for the match again?
I think you're both right. There's been a problem. Like, the Bloodline story stuttered when Jimmy attacked Jay. It didn't make a huge lot of sense, and I think we are right to criticize it. Something went horribly wrong there, because he gave his reasoning as, I didn't want you to turn into the next Roman Reigns, and then went straight back to being Roman Reigns' toady. Now, they told a really interesting story with Roman just kind of using Jimmy, and because we already knew he wasn't the chosen one, and Roman didn't give a stuff about him. We already knew that. And I've been waiting this whole time for Roman just to tell Jimmy he doesn't care about him and that he was never the one he wanted. Jay was the one he wanted, and Jimmy's nothing. And that is what I feel like they should have done at this point. But then Jimmy has to then go through, because they needed to do that before Roman got carried away and sucked into the whole Rock and Cody story. So I feel like it's a little bit too late to do that now. Where at least before Mania, they could do it after Mania, but it might not matter then. But here's the thing: I feel like, I do think there needs to be a real promo off between these two people, and I do think it could happen after the match or during the match. They could tell a story within the match where Jay's like, "Tell me why." And Jimmy eventually breaks down and goes, "Because I don't know what I am without you. I don't know who I am if we're not the Usos. I thought I was a guy on my own. I thought I wanted to be with Roman. I don't. Screw that guy. I don't ever regret super kicking him. My only regret is losing you. And I'm lost. I'm absolutely lost. I think this is a story that needs to begin with violence, but I think this needs to. I want this to have a wholesome ending. There was a wholesome ending to a feud last year as well, which is McIntyre and Sheamus. They both lost to Gunther, but they left together. And that was kind of a nice moment. And they could do something similar here. And that would really throw a spanner in the works for Roman Reigns as well. It would really get, we could then see some backstage moments of him sitting there like this, snarling away. Then he could just look at Solo like, you know what to do. But the problem is, by that point, Solo could also be doubting what's going on. He might also see the light, because I've been saying for ages Solo's eventually going to lose his temper with Roman Reigns, and a Samoan spike is coming Roman's way at some point, but that is in his future, and I think these two might be the catalyst for that. They really, really, really need to somehow bring these two back into the Roman Reigns story, and to some extent Sami Zayn as well, for all this to come full circle for me. Like, there is an argument that might be a little bit overbooked, but I don't think it is, because they've been telling this story for so long. WWE, don't now tell me not to be invested in the thing you've been telling me to be invested in for so long. I get they've all gone their separate ways, but it's all still relevant. Everything's still connected, and I think this is where, if these two just have a match and then it ends, I won't be happy. I really want to see some catharsis here and some story.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'd like to see a stipulation added, to be honest. Like, I know Norman said about ladders or tables. How about throwing some sort of Samoan street fight? I don't know, whatever it's called. But something along those lines where, like, it breaks up that monotony of super kick, splash. And, like, they get the opportunity to be a little bit gritty and a little bit, like, more violent with each other. And that's, something that they've earned the right to have this match. That so many times these guys were missed off the card when they were a team, and they were one of the best tag teams that the company had, and they were left off the card. But you're not making us care about this match the way it is right now. And I like your ideas. I do think something's got to come out of it, and it can't just be Jay wins or Jimmy wins and that's it. But you have to give us something, because right now you've dropped the ball massively on this one, probably the worst of any of the matches so far. And that feels impossible and ridiculous to say. It's a brother versus brother, Uso versus Uso, but right now it's not the one.
I've been thinking, I mean, while Sam was talking, and even before we started saying a couple of bits, I had thoughts in my head of how I want to see this finish. And to me, have the match, do whatever's needed. I'd have Jimmy win the match. Jey Uso's in the corner looking devastated. And if I said to you, Cody versus Dustin, double or nothing. Do you remember the promo that Cody cut after the match?
I need my older brother.
Yep. What if you did that and you finished with the line, I need my older brother to finish the bloodline?
Something like that'd be great.
And then you could have Roman and Solo going up against the Usos. There's no titles involved because Roman has lost the title, and you have the absolute complete implosion of the bloodline, Roman and Solo. They go their separate ways, and you have the Usos back as a face tag team.
Yeah, I wonder if you don't be so on the nose and kind of hint that we all know that he's meaning we've got to bring down Roman, but maybe just say, I need my brother to do what needs to be done. And it can kind of be one of those things where you're like, oh, is he going to recruit him back into the bloodline? And maybe then they turn their back on Roman later on in the night. And it's that kind of like shock factor. But I don't know. I also feel like this is maybe the match where we see a bit of an evolution in moveset for Jay in particular, because he's so proud that maybe this is the one where we need to see him do a few different moves, because I imagine the commentators table is going to be very much these guys know each other so well. There'll be a lot of moves where it's reverse after reverse after reverse, and someone needs to do something different to pick up that win. So do we see a submission move from someone to win the match? And maybe that's where Jimmy can get a win because he just wasn't expecting it, or something along those lines. But we need to see one of them differentiate themselves. But yeah, they Miplet there says, I would have Jimmy give him a hug. Give me a hug. I'd have a hug from Jimmy, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
And apologise. And then they turn on Roman. Andy read my mind. I'm going to guess it's Ant who says
that could be Dom or Ant, that one.
That could literally be either of them.
Yeah, my money's on Dom actually for that one. He's a fan of those analogies.
We'll move swiftly on to something that's been getting a lot of focus in the last few weeks, and a lot of people on social media talking about this one as well. Sami Zayn, who of course headlined night one last year with the two men that we've just been discussing, with the Usos, as well as Kevin Owens, who we've already spoke about as well. He's going to be challenging who seems like the unbeatable Intercontinental Champion, Gunther. We don't know, I should say, by the way, officially what's on night one and what's on night two. That hasn't been announced outside of the Rock and Roman tag team matches on night one. Cody, and presumably Seth's match is going to be on night two as well, because that would be ridiculous if they stick that on night one. So this could be night one, this could be night two. Do we feel like this is one of those matches where we could... That comment really doesn't help me work out who it is.
They both do this. They both always do this. If the three of us are on here, one of them will always faff about in the back end.
Anyway, sorry. Is this going to be one of those matches where we come out of it going, that was an absolute banger? That is probably the match that has stole the show or the weekend in terms of wrestling. Sam, we'll come to you for this one. Is this the one?
Yes, absolutely. These two are both bloody brilliant. like ever since he did those empty arena promos with the backstage interviewer, we were heading towards this match because Gunther was the only one who didn't have an opponent after a certain beast was sent to the pound. But yeah, like this is still great. Both of these two guys are great. Sami Zayn, I don't know what the plan was with Sami Zayn. You know, before, bloody hell, I've just seen that comment. Oh my God. This is going to be great. Like Gunther and Sami Zayn, I sometimes think are impervious to bad matches. Both of them fascinate me. I love what they're doing with Sami Zayn at the moment with the backstage segments with Chad Gable. Calling it now, Chad Gable is going to turn on him horrifically. I've been calling that for weeks. Gable is about to become the ultimate supervillain. We're not going to see sheesh, thank you, goofy heel Gable. We're about to see psycho killer Gable. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, this is going to be great. But I do think Gunther retains here because I think there's a wider story to tell. They need Sami to go back to being the underdog from the underground. He can't be the underdog from the underground unless he loses here. I think he feuds with Gable for a bit after WrestleMania. Gunther continues to be, look at me. But I do think he takes it off Gunther at SummerSlam after overcoming Gable. But who knows if a certain other person does return to the company and they do that match versus Gunther that they wanted to do. But they don't need the title to do that. I suppose, although it would have really skyrocketed the IC championship. But Gunther, as far as I'm concerned, the IC title, I find it a bigger deal these days than the big gold belt. Sorry, I just do.
Oh, that's very interesting, especially after that epic promo on Raw. Dan, we'll come to you. Paragon Smith is Andy, who I'll be going to Philly with as well. Who says wrestling? He was the OG with me on Wrestling Royalty, who occasionally kicks around. You might see him on a video or two when we're across there as well in Philly. But thank you for tuning in. Paragon Saint, not Smith. I don't know why he's named himself that. Dan, on Raw, were you shocked to see Sami Zayn come up short against Big Bronson Reed?
Yeah, definitely. We can tell why they did it because we had the Chad Gable segment afterwards. But you give Sami a loss this close to a huge match at WrestleMania, it's not going to do anything for Sami. If you give Sami the win, you've got the momentum. It feels like he could challenge Gunther. If you have him lose against Bronson Reed and then go up against Gunther and he beats Gunther, is that saying Bronson Reed is better than Gunther? It's a very, very tricky one. And like I said, we can see why they've done it, especially with the Chad Gable story. But could you see Sami winning and then the first feud being Chad Gable because he couldn't beat Gunther? I think that could be a way that I would see it going more than having Gunther retain.
And he could say he owes him if he feels like he's kind of giving him the advice that got him over the line as well, I guess.
Yeah.
See, I personally think it might be more powerful for starters. Gable might not have the best of intentions, which is what I think at the moment. But if he does have the best of intentions, and then Sami loses, like he might be furious. Because like Gable's honest opinion is, you are not the guy, Sami. I am the guy. I get one more crack at this guy, and I solve this Rubik's cube. That is Gunther. I'm nearly there, and you're in the bloody way of it. And here's the thing: heels are. I know he's not a heel yet. But the whole point of heels is they're often delusional. They're not correct. That when they often turn face when they see the light and they realize that, which we saw on TNA a couple of weeks ago with Cody Deaner, which was an amazing face turn because he came out to boos and went back to cheers just from a promo. It was really special. But I think they could do that the other way around. But I'm like, yeah, because the biggest story here is what do you do with Gunther's title reign? That's got to end, in a really big and significant way, and you've got to make Sami Zayn the underdog from the underground. So he's got to keep getting kicked to the curb before he finally does the Daniel Bryan thing. But I also reckon if Roman Reigns loses at Mania, which we don't know if he is, I don't see Gunther. I don't see Gunther losing too. I don't think they've got the stones to end both Roman and Gunther's amazing title reigns at Mania. I do think Seth is on borrowed time, and I think Logan Paul might be on borrowed time, although I'm changing my mind about that a little bit. There's definitely going to be some awesome title changes at this Mania. I don't know if they do it with this one, though. I think it's too money.
It's an interesting one because I've always believed that if you're going to end an epic title run, WrestleMania is the only place you should really do it. But then maybe it becomes a bit too formulaic, and
exactly
they've kind of backed themselves into a corner because there's so many long title reigns right now that you even like Seth, like no one else has had that belt. So like, yes, it might not be as long as everyone else's title reign, but no one else has touched that belt so far. So that's another like interesting thing. But I do think they provided a really interesting wrinkle having Sammy lose on Monday because it kind of cripples that confidence. I was like fully invested that he was going to win because the way he was like, oh, his face changed when he was like, thank you, I know what I need to do now. And he went out and still got distracted. And Gunther really, I know Chad Gable was saying, oh, he gets in your head and stuff like that and he makes you believe that you're going to lose. I've never really seen that from Gunther. I always think Gunther just goes out and he's just a very, very good wrestler. And he's not worried about you because he has the confidence in himself. This is really the first time we've seen mind games from Gunther in the sense of he comes to ringside and he completely admonished the way that Sammy looks. And he started really like pulling into that like ultra heel mode that he's had. Whereas before he's maybe just been a little bit confident because no one really beats him. But he's kind of steered into a different direction here. And I don't know, this is the first time Sammy losing made me feel, are they going to do this? Because they're kind of building up that Sammy doesn't have a chance. And if he loses to Bronson Reed, he's definitely going to lose to Gunther sort of thing. So I thought it was fascinating and a really smart decision as well, just to kind of like plant that seed that, oh, what are they doing here? And why is he losing? Tyler's in, and he says evening. So hello, good evening to you. We are just after 10 o'clock UK time.
Taylor's in the UK as well. Taylor's one of my Deserto boys.
There we go. We've got Frank in as well. Sorry I'm late, but do you think the IC title match will change or add Chad or more wrestlers? I think they're going to stick to just one-on-one. I'm only speaking to myself. The lads might think something else. I think they're very much just going to steer into having Chad maybe ringside. Maybe he does kind of get involved, maybe he doesn't, but I don't think he's in the match personally. Is that the same as what you guys are thinking?
I'm thinking he could be there to help support Sammy because I think that Gunther will have the rest of Imperium there and it'll just be a little bit of countering Imperium's number game. But I don't want him to get involved. I want it to be a completely clean match. And last year at WrestleMania, you had Gunther versus Sheamus versus Drew. All three came out on their own. There was no shenanigans or anything like that, which made the match so much better.
Yeah.
And I think you could get away with doing it this year, but you've got the triple threat for the Universal title instead. So again, I don't want them to be too formulaic with having triple threat match year on year for the same titles. So switching it up is a good thing. But I think if you're having Sammy lose like he did, it's putting him back as that underdog character again.
Yeah.
So the crowd are going to get behind him like they did when he went up against Roman. And I think that's where Sami Zayn is at his absolute best. So when he does win, it is such a big deal. And I can see him pouring the title on him.
I'd be really into if he came out of WrestleMania and he's like cut his hair back to how it was when he was that flat cap on, jacket on,
original,
sort
of scar style.
And maybe that's what Chad is kind of saying. You need to go back to who you are and like don't let him get in your head. Just remember who you are and like why you're here. But just add to that, I'd pop massively. Sami Zayn wins the IC title. Chad Gable comes out seemingly to celebrate and then just absolutely destroys him in the middle of the ring. Like I think that would be a really cool like moment, because it's a bit of a harken back to Sammy being really trusting of people like Kevin Owens who've done that to him in the past. But like, it would also like just catapult Chad Gable into like, oh my God, I've got to watch Raw because I've got to see why he did that. And like this new kind of like whole thing. And Alpha Academy lost, in their title chance at NXT. Like, they're not going to be on the card at all. So like, there's lots of reasons there. I'm not really sure what's going on with the chat. If we can see your comments, so please feel free to keep commenting. But we'll put up everyone else's comments as and when we can as well. I don't know whose channel you're watching. It might be Wrestling Royalty or Give Me a Whole Yeah. But we should be able to see them. I'm not sure why you can't, but we'll see if we can change anything there. But yeah, we can see it. Keep going.
I promise you, like, because that's ace, like Chad Gable attacking him and that throwback to Sammy being trusting. But I mean, like, if you've been friends with Kevin Owens for that long, or Kevin Steen as he used to be, Sammy, come on now. But yeah, I promise you, the whole reason they're doing this whole thing with Sami Zayn and Chad Gable is because after WrestleMania, whether Sammy wins or loses, that's your feud going into Backlash. I tell you now.
Yeah. I had a question directed, which was, am I excited for Philly? I'm very excited for Philadelphia, and it feels mental that it's only a few days away now. I'm flying out on Wednesday. We'll be in Philly, hopefully eating my first Philly cheese sandwich or Philly cheese steak later on Wednesday. I'll maybe even film that experience of finding one. I haven't had a drink year so far, by the way. So I'm going to be a very cheap date when it comes to WrestleMania, and there is some drinking being planned. But yeah, I'm going to be at the Progress show. I'm going to be at the WrestleCon Super show. Hopefully check out at least one more while we're there. SmackDown, Hall of Fame, WrestleMania, NXT. I'm even fitting in a 5K run, which finishes next to the Rocky Steps in Philadelphia as well, which is super cool. So very excited to see the sights of Philadelphia. And yeah, very, very excited to be there. And of course, I will keep you updated while I'm out there. I might even jump on a stream if I can when the guys are there. We're going to cover off one more match, and then Dan's going to explain what's going on next weekend for WrestleMania weekend. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly talk about the six-pack ladder match for the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championships. After that, Dan will then do his little thing when it comes to predictions and where you can keep up with the guys next weekend. We are 2 teams short here. This is going to be decided tomorrow night, where you've got, I believe it's either Street Profits, you've got Tyler Bate,
down under New Catch Republic and Legado del Fantasma.
There we go. So maybe we start this off. Straight answer, Dan, which 2 teams are joining here?
I would love it to be New Catch Republic, and I think I would prefer to see the Street Profits.
Sam, who are the 2 teams joining here?
I just don't. There's too many. I don't know. I'm more into. I think Judgment Day are losing it, but I don't know if these are the teams that take it off them yet. Does that make sense? Like, some people, I know Dom is saying, "Oh, Truth and Miz are doing it." I can't believe that. I'm sorry, I'm not DIY. There yet. DIY would be great, but I don't know if I'm there either. But I do think Judgment Day have to lose here, because I do think Judgment Day implode at Mania. But I predicted Judgment Day would implode last Mania, and they didn't. So who knows? But in terms of the other teams, I haven't got them all in my brain right now, so I'm not entirely sure. But I think there's so many men in this match. It's going to be men throwing men at men. It's going to be great. I can't bloody wait. But I do love a ladder match at Mania. I don't really care who wins. I really don't want it to. Apart from, I really don't want it to be Miz and Truth. No disrespect to them. But there, Michael makes a good point with that Dudley Boys thing there. We could see some special guests in this match, but I do think they should use their own roster, personally. That's just me. Sorry about my squeaky chair, by the way.
That's all right. I just thought you were farting. I think it's more likely to be Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne is one of the teams. I think what will probably happen, and we'll go into what the possibility at the end, I reckon that we're probably going to see interference in both these matches tomorrow night, and what will end up setting up is LWO versus Legado del Fantasma. So I think that's probably where that happens. And I think the Authors of Pain will probably cost Street Profits, which by process of elimination will be Grayson Waller and I've forgot his name.
Wait a sec. On LWO appearing at Stand and Deliver instead?
Not yet, because that is a match where there's a triple threat to determine who goes in, but that also might change into like a fatal four-way tag match for the NXT tag team titles.
Because they seem to be being used more in NXT than the main roster at the moment. That's my only, not fear, but observation, I suppose.
LWO, Good Brothers, and A-Kid and Nathan Fraser, who the winner of that match goes on to the tag titles for NXT. But it's Legado del Fantasma who are in this one, not LWO. So I think there's still beef between them that will kind of sort that out. But I think the winner is Awesome Truth because it's just the way it's been built. My head says that. My heart says DIY because I'm a NXT black and gold through and through. I just want those guys to have their moment. And I think they deserve it. But I also think everyone here has got their part to play. I just think it's going to be an absolute spot fest. I think it's going to be fantastic. It's just going to be very entertaining. It doesn't need to be anything else. Car crash all over, tables, ladders, chairs. Oh my, give me everything.
So I have got a very interesting idea that I did think about because I heard about a contract being up on the 1st of April.
Hit us, Dan.
Motor City Machine Guns from TNA. I know there wouldn't be Cody level pop. There wouldn't be a huge pop like the Hardys returning at WrestleMania. But for the educated, Motor City Machine Guns could go into this match and absolutely tear it up.
I think anyone who knows wrestling knows who they are. I think also like Kushida worked for the company, and Alex Shelley has wrestled in NXT. So there is good relations between Motor City Machine Guns and WWE right now. Like they were TNT. They were TNA through and through back in the day, which is why they never really got signed by WWE because they're happy doing what they were doing, and they've been big Ring of Honor guys as well. But I've heard something similar, and they have. It's like you say, they have just finished up with TNA, and it's very suspicious. Their last match was at the tapings in Philly. So
I think I read they've got a couple of indie show titles that they're still holding on to, which isn't a massive issue because they could still do an appearance here and they don't have to win the titles or anything, but it'd be a good introduction for them. But it's not a bad shout at all. There's a couple of things going on here. Frank in the comments, Motor City Machine Guns would get a good pop for sure.
Definitely.
The Creed brothers aren't involved here. They unfortunately did lose in an absolute banger of a match with DIY. I thought that was a fantastic match a couple of weeks back on Raw. One of those ones where it really felt like you could tell Raw was shifting to have at least one or two outstanding matches each week. Tyler said he just remembered it was a ladder match. It's been a day, ignore me. 2 teams on 2 ladders getting separate belts. I did say this, I think it was last week, the week before. I want to see that. I think it's a fantastic way to split it. The tag team roster is now big enough to support 2 separate belts. And if they don't, for the love of God, just make it 1 belt or like 2 belts, not 4, and make them look really cool as well, because this is just evidence that the tag team division has built up since Triple H has been back there. We saw it in NXT back in the day as well. He puts a lot of stock into tag team wrestling. We saw the tag team main event of WrestleMania last year. The division is moving places, and I think this is just going to be a great match all round. And as I say, this is one that I don't want to miss. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who can make a name for themselves here, and hopefully DIY pick up the victory. But unfortunately, I think even in 2024, it makes 0 sense. Awesome Truth are probably going to walk away with it. What else have we got going on? Right, so I did promise you, and Nippler, you did say that I can't wait for Stand and Deliver. I'm hoping we might be able to squeeze in a Stand and Deliver preview show on either Sunday or Monday night. The only way you can make sure that you know which night that is to hit that subscribe button for both Gimme Hell Yeah and Wrestling Royalty. And you might see our faces again before the weekend is over, speaking about NXT, because there's some great matches on Stand and Deliver. And if you know anything, all three of us are very passionate about NXT and very much so looking forward to that event as well. But before we move on to the last couple of matches for WrestleMania that have been announced already, Dan, the floor is yours. What can people look forward to when it comes to WrestleMania on Gimme a Hell Yeah?
So for the first time, I think, since I joined Gimme Hell Yeah, I will be covering both nights of WrestleMania, and if Sam wants me, I might be able to do the Friday Night SmackDown as well with you if you really wish.
It might be worth us chatting a little bit about this backstage, because I'm not here on the Friday. I'm afraid. And but yeah, well, I think I'll talk. I'll talk about.
We'll do it after.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things to ask and suggest, but anyway.
And what I am going to do is after the SmackDown show tomorrow, I'm going to start putting our predictions quiz together. I'm going to try and keep them for every single pay-per-view this year, but with WrestleMania being a big one, WrestleMania 40, we're going to have a big predictions contest both nights in one go, and we're going to have stipulation wins. Is it going to be pinfall, submission, whatever you think? And I'm going to see if I can persuade the guys or the rest of the guys to do a prize for whoever wins. I haven't actually spoken to them about it. This is a first I've actually said, but we might see if we can get some merch sent out to you. Gimme a Hell Yeah on there. So you've got to be in it to win it. So we're going to have that sent out hopefully by probably Wednesday, and then do a, depending on who's available, a predictions video, maybe the Thursday or the Friday before WrestleMania, and then we can sit and watch it all live all weekend. I'll be having plenty of Red Bull at the side of me, or some sort of very highly caffeinated energy drink. I'm not sponsoring Logan Paul, so it will not be Pram though.
So what I'm hearing basically is you might have 3 nights of Dan Hargreaves next weekend. Definitely 2 for WrestleMania. So you can tune in with Dan. You might get a couple of guests popping their head in with Dan as well. Always great to have someone. I might even try and do some sort of appearance inside Lincoln Field, Financial Field, whatever it's called. And yeah, great to hear that Gimme a Hell Yeah is going to be all over WrestleMania, as you probably have expected already. But yeah, make sure you tune in and subscribe to the channel to make sure that you are up to date with when they are going live, and make sure you hit that subscribe button on Wrestling Royalty and give these videos a like as well. It's always nice to have a little bit of appreciation for these nights as well. So I did say we are going to be moving on to the business end of WrestleMania. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting, because there's this tag team match, and then there's the 2 world title matches, men's world title matches to discuss as well. I thought structurally it makes sense to talk about this one first, and then we'll talk about the merits of the other 2 matches afterwards. There is a lot to unpack here.
I'm going to love you and leave you for these 2. If that's all right, because I think everyone knows my the things I've said extensively about this stuff, but I've got to shoot because something's going on in the back end, as it were. It's not nothing gross. But I'll catch you very, very soon. But yeah, I'm sorry. Bad guys are winning this one, 100%. I'll catch you both very, very soon. And happy WrestleMania. It's coming soon.
No worries. Thanks, man. Catch you soon.
Say so, dude.
And then there were 2. Bit ominous. I don't know what that was about. I'm sure we'll find out. But This is the thing. We're going live. Anything can happen. Maybe he's putting a fire out. Maybe the Rock's just come bursting through the door with a belt. Who knows? Anyway, we are going to be talking about this tag team match: Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns and the final boss himself, Mr. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. The winner of this, there is a sort of stipulation on the line, I guess, of if Roman and The Rock win, the following night, on night 2, the main event between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes will be bloodline rules. So basically anything goes, no DQ, anything can happen. And on the other side, I don't think it really affects Seth Rollins. They've kind of teased that his title will be gone, but I don't think that was anything more than just a sort of idle threat thrown out there as a bit of shade towards Seth's title. But should Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes win, the bloodline will not be present. They will stay away from the main event. They will not be allowed to get involved in any way, shape, or form, or so they say anyway. The way this has been built, and bear in mind, we saw on Raw The Rock and Jimmy and Solo come and attack like people after the match between Nakamura and Jay. Is this telegraphed to be The Rock and Roman are going to win this?
You'd think, reading between the lines and how you expect stuff to go, you expect The Rock to come in and want to put on a good match, but is he business enough where he wants to put over someone else? I don't know. And I don't know whether Roman would want a loss before his match on the Sunday on his record, even if he doesn't take the pinfall. The way that I've seen this one going is Seth is there to take the pinfall from The Rock, which leaves Cody and Roman completely separate from the actual decision of the match. So when they go into the match the next night, every single part of what has happened hasn't been down to them in terms of the stipulation.
Right. Okay. There's so much to unpack. Like it's very difficult to know where to really start with this, and maybe we have to kind of rewind a little bit, because first of all, there's questions as to whether this was always the plan, or was the plan actually going to be Rock versus Roman? Was that what was going to go down at WrestleMania 40, or were we deceived and it was just this is exactly how it was supposed to play out? And as we kind of go through this and then into the next matches, I think our views will kind of come hopefully splitting out, because it is very difficult to kind of like keep things like cohesive and linear. Hi Malik, glad you could join us. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. What do you think of the tag team match? Is it as straightforward as Rock and Roman are definitely winning here, or is there something else that's going to play out that we just can't think of yet? For my money, I think there's a mix. I don't think they expected quite the backlash, but I also think they fabricated some of it to push Cody a little bit further along and see they knew fans would react in the way they were going to. And, you know, this was a way to create a little bit of sympathy for Cody and a little bit of groundswell of support as well. And you've seen what can happen when the WWE Universe pick their side and move on. But we've also then seen the popularity of The Rock. It's very difficult to boo someone as entertaining and charismatic as The Rock.
Yeah.
And I've been quite surprised as to how involved The Rock's been. I thought he might do a couple of appearances here and there, but he's putting Roman to shame by this point, because he is doing surprise appearances in Chicago. He was there on SmackDown. He's done, Hollywood Rock sing-along. He's going to be in Brooklyn on Monday as well.
Yep.
And I'm noticing a lot of people are saying the same thing. And Maldik's just said it there. Cody versus Roman is getting overshadowed by Rock and Cody's interactions. If I threw this out there to you, Dan, and let me know what you think, I think this is a very clever way that everyone knows how historic and legendary The Rock is within WWE and wrestling in general. He is pushing Cody to new levels that Roman alone could not have done. Rock is there to make Cody more of a star by going toe to toe with The Rock. And I think that's the reason why this is happening, where it's perceived that he's overshadowing. I also think there's an undercurrent of something that we'll get into in the next match, or one of the next matches, is I think it lends itself to something that will happen there. But right now, I think The Rock's job is to be overbearing and so overshadowing for Roman that actually he's calling himself the final boss, which just to me is bigger and better than, you know, the head of the table. The final boss sounds cool as hell. But if Cody is the one who's having to get beaten down and things like that, Cody's star is shining brighter than ever. Let's not forget, he and Roman, in particular he, is going to be the first time anyone's main evented 2 nights back-to-back at WrestleMania. Cody Rhodes is doing that. And he's on this vehicle with The Rock because The Rock is the one who's going to get those mainstream headlines. So people then will go, actually, I want to know, who's this guy that The Rock just beat the absolute hell out of on Raw and keeps talking smack about on his Instagram and his Facebook posts? He's talking about Cody. He's not talking about Roman.
Yeah.
So this is a rocket strap for Cody. What do you think? Because it occurred to me over the last couple of days, maybe that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on the money. And if you're putting anyone up against The Rock has so much mainstream audience that anyone even associated with it, even Seth is going to get a rub from this.
Mm-hmm.
But WWE are looking at Cody as this, I don't want to say Hulk Hogan-like figure, but someone that is going to be the absolute picture of WWE. Think of John Cena. Think of maybe not the heelish version, but the level that Stone Cold Steve Austin had of popularity. That is what they're trying to get for Cody. And anyone that can help that story, that narrative, is going to be there for that reason. The Rock is there, so Cody is getting that wide mainstream rub from The Rock. So no matter what you see on any social media, whether it is Twitter, whether it is Instagram, whether it's even stuff like Snapchat or TikTok, The Rock he might be destroying Cody Rhodes in that photo that you've got there, but he's putting Cody over in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have Cody win, he's going to be the one on these talk shows, and people are going to associate, oh, that's the guy that he beat, that's the guy who The Rock beat up, and he's now the champion. What's he doing now? And that's going to draw even more eyes to the product, because people who don't watch wrestling or don't watch wrestling on a long-term basis like me and you do,
Mm-hmm.
they might watch something like, I don't know, Jimmy Fallon or Kimmel or these American talk shows where they do go on with the titles and do promos and talk about stuff. That's giving Cody that mainstream popularity that will then draw back to WWE again in that long run. So The Rock there, it's only going to be a positive for Cody. It might look like he's beating him up, but he's giving Cody the rub of his life.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds awesome to have the rub of your life from The Rock in the rain in Chicago. But I just thought that was amazing. That end to Raw where you're spilling to the outside, something that we maybe would associate, that we'd see back in the Attitude Era, where you're not just limited to the confines of an arena. They spilled out into the Chicago rain. And, they even teased, like, at one point, I showed it to my wife, and she was like, is he going to throw him over that, like, kind of, like, barrier thing? And
I saw that, and I was like, that could actually happen. But I did like the way it did end.
Yeah, and, I think it's pretty obvious that Cody bladed, but, because they very much kind of, like, drew your attention with The Rock, pulled the camera, did his, like, sort of, like, monologue into it, very DC Universe, almost like bad guy talking into it, into the camera, and going back to then Cody's bloody face against like, you know, his own tour bus and whatever, it was just fantastic. It was so well done. It was so necessary as well. I spoke with a couple of people a few weeks back, and I said, in this feud before WrestleMania, there's a few things that need to happen. They need Cody to put a proper babyface emotional speech promo out there. They did that where he kind of spoke about his mum. They then needed him to have a proper aggressive promo where you see that he's not a pushover and he's got a little sort of, you know, piss and vinegar in him, and he is willing to kind of go that action. He did that. He cut that promo exceptionally well, and you needed to see the Bloodline destroy Cody Rhodes. And then, to me, they have to lose this tag team match. Cody Rhodes and Seth have to lose this tag team match, because you have to, in storytelling, and that's where I pride myself as a storyteller, you have to put him in a position where he's an underdog and you want to root for him. And the only way to do that is to push him right back down to the bottom. You need to see the odds be stacked against him. He then needs to kind of rally against it, and you need to want him to win. And the only way you can do that is by making him vulnerable, by making him sink back down there. So I think it's been great storytelling. They've checked all the boxes for me. I think there needs to be something between him and Roman better than what they gave us on SmackDown before we go. And maybe we see one more beatdown, but Raw is going to be interesting next week when we've got Roman and The Rock going to be there. But certainly, hopefully we addressed why this feels like an overshadowing thing of The Rock. I think it's necessary. And I think there's one more reason we will get into why in a second. We have had Sam on. We do think everything's okay. He's just had something he needs to sort out. As I say, sometimes it comes across a little bit urgent. This is just live streaming. It happens from time to time. Malduke says, do you guys think we're on the brink of a new Attitude Era? That's a big question. Dan, I'll let you kind of answer that one. Do you think we're on the brink of a new Attitude Era or something different?
I think with the PG restrictions that WWE have got, it's going to be hard to go to a complete Attitude Era level. But I think the way that Triple H is booking stuff and giving the performers a bit more freedom in terms of the promos that they're doing, because again, that Monday Night Raw promo between Seth, Drew and Punk, that did feel very Attitude-esque. There was stuff bleeped out that you wouldn't have got in the Attitude Era, but that is because of the content level that they have on them at the minute in terms of the PG. But there was still swearing thrown about. There was, even from The Rock, there was swearing in that segment at the end. And will never match the Attitude Era level of either violence or promos. But I think we're getting back to that level, because you look at the transition from what you could do on TV and you couldn't do on TV as a PG or PG-13 product back in the year 2000 compared to what it is now. And you look at the movies of the same era of what a PG rated are, whatever the films are then, compared to what they are now, you are able to get away with quite a bit more.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll ever get back to the full Attitude Era level, but I think they are going to start bringing in more of this grit reality level of performing, of promo writing, or not even writing, promo sort of themselves. So I think it's going to be a very interesting product this time, probably next year, maybe even the year after, if Triple H is still able to push things and push these boundaries with the networks.
And we've got that interesting factor of Netflix as well, where they're not going to be bound by the same sort of advertising.
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
So like the networks at the moment are very much a case of we have to stick by PG-13 because the content needs to be wholesome for our advertisers to make sure that they are joining into, you know, for the breaks and stuff. But when it comes to Netflix, the gloves might be off even more. Maybe we'll see something a bit more sort of like, what's their next one up? Is it 14 something or other, M14. If you're in America, let us know what's the next one up from a PG-13. I know there's another sort of like echelon. In the UK, we go from 12A to 15, and 15 basically allows you to have a few extra swear words and a little bit more sexual content, but that's not necessarily something that we need in wrestling. And I think sometimes the reasons why The Rock's promos have been so hard hitting is because we haven't heard swear words, and that little bit extra that's added in makes you go, oh. And I always think it's interesting when you hear like an F-bomb or, you know, a female dog name mentioned. It makes it a little bit more believable, a little bit more reality based, and you hear that pop from the crowd, and it's always a very interesting one. But yeah, I think the tag team match can be great. I'd also like to say, I don't know if you noticed, that entrance that The Rock made on Raw looks so badass with the lightning.
Yeah. Even the music and every single part of it, again, the level itself was upped to make him feel like the biggest star. Coming from Hollywood, obviously, it felt, even though we haven't seen many of them, it felt bigger than Roman Reigns' entrance, which is a big thing to try and pull off.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know if it was the camera angle. They had it slightly like elevated from the ring, like looking back down towards it. You saw him walk out in the spotlight, but then the flashes of lightning just kind of made it feel like this is a final boss, like in name and like stature. Like it just feels like a big deal. And like the slowed down version of his entrance music that kicks in after his kind of like the drums at the beginning. I'm really excited to see what they do for his entrance at WrestleMania, because I think this is a chance to do something pretty epic. I'm always really excited about what the stage looks like, so I'm hoping they do something big for Philly.
They've got to for 40, haven't they?
Surely. Like, I know they kind of had a bit of a misstep with just a giant screen at 35, but since then we've had giant pirate ships. We've had the movie theater that we saw last year, which is probably up there as one of the best WrestleMania stages they've ever done. So I want to see something big, or it doesn't even have to be big. It just has to be something like special, especially with 40 as well. And they've got potentially a good theme in the Liberty Bell and like American history and things like that. Or maybe they do something that harkens back. What I would probably say is, if you don't want to see stuff about WrestleMania stage, stay off social media in the couple of days before, because it is rife. You will see it. If you want to see it for the first time when you tune in, or if you're going, stay off social media, or maybe put on some like mute words for like WrestleMania stage, etc., and things like that. Because I get really excited, I geek out when I see it for the first time. But yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, Miplet. We're only going to be on for a little bit longer. Have a great night, and we will potentially see you later on in the weekend for a Stand and Deliver preview. We're only one weekend away from WrestleMania. So on the back end of that, no matter what happens in the tag team match, we do have Seth freaking Rollins versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. I'm so glad that I put these ones on where it tells me the name of the title, because sometimes I do forget what they're calling them these days. But we're going to start with this one before we move on to Cody versus Roman. We saw, in my opinion, one of the best promos in ages between Seth, Drew, and the returning CM Punk, who we found out is going to be special guest commentator for the match. Let's start there. What did you think of that interaction between the three of them?
It was absolutely incredible. I think I've watched it 3 or 4 times since Monday Night Raw, just because it was such a good back and forth. I've tried sort of looking and reading between lines. Is Punk going to go involved? Is he going to just be sat there and just doing commentary? Is there a possibility he could be involved in the finish of the match? Is Drew going to just go and give him a boot to the face just because he's sat there? There's so many things that I'm excited about for this match, and I think it's going to be work rate central for these two. It's going to just be such a good match. I think out of every single match on the card, this has got the potential to be the best match of the lot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. we've said that a few times tonight. So like you got the IC title match that could be a great match. The spot fest that will be the ladder match. But yeah, I think in terms of like pure wrestling and kind of a spectacle, this feels like they've had a couple of goes previously and maybe held back a little bit for this very match or for this reason. Maybe things were supposed to play out differently in an alternative universe, and in the multiverse we would have seen CM Punk versus Seth Rollins, or we might have seen a triple threat, but this is what we've got, and I also think they've had a great time of putting this together. Seth very much saying, I don't really think about you, Drew, I don't think about you, CM Punk, I just think about this title, and he's also been very much involved in that bloodline feud as well, and then just adding in, just drip feeding CM Punk in right at the end gives this an extra special thing, because there was a lot of people saying this is overshadowed, like by the tag team match, as is the other world title match as well. But I don't know, after Raw, I was like, I'm excited for this one now, because I want to know, and it's going to be a weird thing because obviously you guys watching it at home are going to get to hear what CM Punk's saying. How is that going to translate in a stadium where we know CM Punk's there? He'll get his entrance to come out, but we don't know what he's saying. So it makes me want to then go watch it again straight away afterwards to hear what it was said. And I think he'll get involved somehow.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that you don't have CM Punk sat at ringside and not be involved in the match in some way, even if it's not directly in the finish. It's just going to muddy the waters of what can CM Punk get away with, or will he get thrown out of the arena? But yeah, again, I'm excited to hear him on commentary. I think he does say it best. He is the best in the world at what he does, because he's good. He is absolutely great on commentary. He's a brilliant performer, and his mic work, I think, is probably in the best 5 or 6 that we've ever seen.
Yeah, he's definitely in that top 5% of talkers with a microphone in his hand. But it'd be interesting because there's obviously a lot of speculation what's going on with Drew McIntyre's contract status as well. Will that kind of be a factor here? Because if it's to be believed, he hasn't re-signed. I struggle to see how you can give him a match of this magnitude for someone who hasn't decided if he's staying with the company or not. Yes, you might want to repay, if he does a good job, you might want to have that. And he's probably, if anything, might have stuck another 0 on his contract negotiations as well with the character work he's done. But he's also, it's not just about this match. He's also set up potential feuds in the future as well, because you want to see CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. So if his contract is genuinely up after WrestleMania, that's money left on the table, which seems very strange. And to me would suggest that he's not winning the belt here. But then what do we get? Seth versus CM Punk, another great match. But it feels like Drew versus CM Punk is the one that they've been trying to write in. He's got T-shirts made about him, things like that. So, yeah, I thought one of the best parts of that whole promo was CM Punk goading Drew McIntyre into trying to sell him. Who told you were the chosen one?
That was absolute genius. And it was such an easy shot to fire. It just made me absolutely chuckle. And you can go back and watch it. I am laughing my head off at it near enough. It was brilliant.
So, really interested to see, because Drew's kind of expression was like, I don't know if he fully expected him to come back and retort with that. But he did have like a sort of like playful smile on his face as well. So it was one of those moments of like, this is why you don't go head to head with CM Punk on a microphone, because he'll say what he damn well wants to say. Mark, it's always great to have you in, mate. Thank you very much for joining us. We're at the tail end, we're at the business end of the WrestleMania card right now. And Mark says, I think dates were added because of his injury, so maybe Drew's deal extends to the summer. Quite possibly. I'm not 100% sure you'd put him in this position if there wasn't a strategy as to him staying on, but that's just me. I don't have any kind of knowledge outside of that. Just put a picture in there that we saw this. Again, very interesting that we're still going to see CM Punk. At one point, the way they were talking, I was like, he's going to beat WrestleMania. He's going to do a triple threat here. and somehow like his arm's not as bad as we thought it was. But I'm glad that it hasn't been rushed into, and they have drip fed him in just to create a little bit more there. This guy, by the way, on the phone behind Drew McIntyre was the same guy who was kept shouting Chicago when CM came back at Survivor Series. So I don't know if he's been rewarded with these kind of seats, but he gets around. He's obviously a very, very proud native of Chicago. I thought the commentary team did a fantastic job on Raw, as they have been the last few weeks, but I thought they were really like on it. Pat seems to have warmed back up into how he was before, if not even better, because he's very consistent with how he's talking up people. And like, almost confusing when he's got his Rock shirt on, but he's doing the Jey Uso like stuff on on the table. So I'm thoroughly entertained, and again, he's brought out the best of Michael Cole, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, so great to have him back. Chris has come in and said Carmella's returning for. She is going to be, I believe, a sign-in for WrestleMania 40. She announced it on her Twitter today that she hoped people haven't forgotten about her, and she's going to be doing a sign-in. I can't remember where it was. I think it was like a cake shop or something like that.
Okay.
Nice to have Carmella back, and congratulations again on becoming a mum with Corey Graves as well. So it'd be cool to have Carmella back. There's also rumors that Alexa Bliss is coming back soon, because she put a tweet out saying back at it with some gym emojis. So we could have a stacked women's roster soon enough as well, with a couple more people being added in. Mark's convinced that Punk's going to do something in the match. Yeah, it does feel like something's going to happen.
Yeah.
On to our main event for the weekend. So bear with us. We are going to come in under 2 hours, I promise. Probably Sam's not here, so we're not going to have any massive monologue.
Definitely going to be under 4 hours.
The main event for the weekend is scheduled to be Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes for the WWE Universal Undisputed King of the World title. But yeah, Roman's title's on the line against Cody Rhodes after Cody became back-to-back winner at the Royal Rumble this year. Obviously, we spoke about the tag team match, and that kind of has a bearing on how this will play out. And we're going to kind of have to discuss this as if what we say happens. So The Rock and Roman win, setting up this match to be a bloodline rules match. Anything goes, anything's possible. Right then, what do we see if that happens?
Oh, if that happens, I think you're going to see Solo, Jimmy, all ringside at some point. But then I also think you're going to have it countered with Jay, with maybe Seth and Sami Zayn, to make sure the numbers game are even, take out each other. Again, still leaving Cody and Roman as the one-on-one match.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that way you can still have Cody win the match. You can have the shenanigans as much as you like, but for the last, I'd say 5 minutes minimum, you want it to be a one-on-one match with just them two, to let them two finish their story.
Yeah.
And you can go either way with that sort of story. You can have it with loads of shenanigans, or you could just have weapons everywhere. I don't think these are the guys that would go that way, because it's not really their character.
Yeah.
But you could do.
Yeah, it definitely feels like this could easily become an overbooked match where like it's fan service, and like I've seen wild rumors and people speculating that John Cena and Stone Cold are going to get involved, and that's the reason why their faces were on the background of that on that truck on Monday. I think that was a troll by WWE. I think they're fully aware that they're the rumors that are going around. They were like, you know what would be really funny? Let's put that in the background because it means absolutely nothing. I think we might see those guys in their own segment, like we saw at 30, where we had Stone Cold, Rock, Hogan. Maybe this time we see Hogan, Cena, Stone Cold, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it here. I don't want it to be ridiculously overbooked. I do feel like there's maybe an Avengers moment coming where you see Team Roman and Bloodline face off against Team Cody and all the people that the Bloodline have wronged over the years, and then it comes
Heels
down
assemble.
Yeah, and what effectively will then boil down to Iron Man in Cody Rhodes versus Thanos in Roman Reigns, where all that can kind of spill away and melt away into the background and back up the ramp or wherever, leaving just these two guys to go at it. And I think that's where it becomes really important. It has to be just these two guys. And for my money, I think Cody has to win. I think there's a lot of faith gone into Cody from the crowd. Should he lose, I think WWE lose a lot of fans and faith in one swift movement. But I'll ask you one last question about this. What if he loses? What happens?
I think you're going to have... I don't think it would be cancelled WWE Network, but I reckon there's going to be a level of backlash that's going to be insurmountable for a long time. You've teased us near enough since WrestleMania 38 when he returned, or at least a couple of weeks after that, where he's talked about finishing his own story, winning the title his dad never won. And if you go that long and have him win 2 Royal Rumbles and still not win the main event of WrestleMania, you've got to think, how long can you keep it going? And people will become disinterested. They will lose so much focus on this story. And I think fans would turn on Cody as well as Roman a lot more than they did last year.
Well, he becomes a punchline, isn't he? Like, to a joke. It's like he's never going to finish his story. Like, he is the guy who couldn't finish a story. And like, we saw Rubber Chicken in the ring with him last year. Like, God knows what happens in Philadelphia, of all places, if he loses.
Exactly. You're in Philadelphia and you don't give the fans what they want. It wouldn't surprise me if there'll be a lot of signs if Roman wins, we riot.
You very well could be, yeah. Some harken back to the ECW stuff. It's a scary thought. I remember vividly coming out of SoFi, and the feeling around the stadium was one of like, I can't believe they've just done that. Like, and people
I think that one was a lot closer to a 50-50. There was a lot of people that still wanted Roman to continue his legacy, but there was a lot of people, I think myself and yourself included, thought that Cody was finishing the story. But I think this year, if you pull the same trick again, it's going to be a 90-10 split of 90 people want Cody to finish that story.
It's also a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And like, people I'm not trusting you again. Like, Cody what happens? Cody, if he loses, fades into obscurity for me. I don't see how you rescue his character after the build that they've given him.
Definitely not.
And to a degree, I think they've purposely diminished Roman's appearances to heighten Cody and to show you like the difference between them. I think him winning would breathe new life into the title picture. It makes so many more possibilities. As we said earlier on, the likes of LA Knight, the likes of AJ Styles would then start to be like, oh, I would get a title match because it's a new version of creative, a new storyline that we haven't seen before. Cody Rhodes then gets to, can you actually be the guy who carries the company, or is Roman right and you're not that guy? Like, you'll never be that guy. And all that kind of story. And that's where Cody's development then comes on, is how long is it until you become the bad guy? And we say it a lot on this, like the Dark Knight stuff. Like, do you live long enough to see yourself become the bad guy and the enemy and stuff like that? And that's where he can still be relevant with that championship. Roman can then go on, and this is where I was sort of hinting at it before. I think Cody wins, and then The Rock basically says to Roman afterwards, after the fact, I gave you everything to beat Cody. I put everything in place. I showed you the way to go, and you still didn't get it done. You can no longer call yourself the head of this table. I'm taking that away from you. Like, you've squandered it. Like, you will bow to your like real tribal chief, you're the high chief, who you should have done in the first place, because people forget he cut a promo not that long ago where he said, "Where should I eat? Should I eat at the head of the table?" Like, that's a line that should really be sticking out, and like people seem to have forgotten about that. So, do you think The Rock is much of a factor here, or is his work done after night one?
I think he's going to be involved in some way in night two, no matter which way it goes, because last year you had Solo kicked out of the ringside area, still came back to affect the outcome of the match. Just because it says in the actual stipulation, all members of the Bloodline will be barred from ringside during the match, doesn't mean they actually have to stick to that. As long as the referee doesn't see it, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
But again, looking past WrestleMania, if you're having Cody win and Roman is losing, you could have The Rock come out and cut that promo on Roman, and that could potentially set up a SummerSlam match. Because in my mind, The Rock is more synonymous with SummerSlam than he is WrestleMania.
Yeah, I agree.
Apart from Austin and Hogan,
that's like the only ones I'd say he's like kind of had.
Yeah.
And even then, Austin was 3 times, Cena was twice, Hogan was a one-off.
Yeah. And that's 6 years of his run. And out of that, can you name anyone else that he really faced at WrestleMania?
He was involved in like the Fatal 4-Way match, where it was like McMahon in each corner.
WrestleMania 2000.
After that, I'd start struggling because I don't think he had as many matches you think he did at WrestleMania.
Nope. And that is, I think, the issue with The Rock is he's not a WrestleMania guy like some people are. The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, he is a SummerSlam guy. And I think that's where you could have the end of this official Bloodline story end with The Rock taking the Bloodline name off Roman and going back to Hollywood.
Quite possibly. Or they do what they did with Cena and we set up for WrestleMania next year between the two of them.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, like if Roman doesn't have the title, maybe he disappears for a little while, licks his wounds, comes back whenever he wants, really. But yeah, we're not going to be beholden to where's the title gone. And I think we will have 2 titles that are defended opposite
regular.
Yeah, but like it means we'll get it. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with Roman. But I do agree. Like for me, I always think of like The Rock is like, I'll go back to Rock versus Brock is like the one that jumps out straight away for me at SummerSlam. So I completely get where you're coming from for that. Maybe it is SummerSlam and then make that even bigger than, and they're already advertising the fact that it's in Cleveland and things like that. So they're going to make a big deal of it anyway. We're not doing predictions tonight, but I will ask you outright, is Cody walking away with the championship?
100%. Straight on land, no questions asked for you. Keep it simple because we've only got a minute before we finish the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, and we're going to quickly just go. I think there's going to be a couple more matches that will be added, and we're going to just quickly mention that. I think there'll be a big luchador fest sort of match go on between LWO and Legado del Fantasma that will involve Dominic Mysterio as well on the Legado's side. I think there's going to be a women's tag team match added as well. I don't know if it will be a strict tag team championship match or if it's the 3 other members outside of Sky versus Naomi, Bianca, and Jade, who's making her SmackDown debut on Friday. So I think there are still a couple of matches light on the card. So watch your space. Tune in to Give Me a Hell Yeah on SmackDown and on Raw, and you'll also see along with those guys when they're doing their watch-alongs. But for now, we are going to finish there. I hope you've enjoyed this mammoth preview. We are going to tie things up here. But I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. I really hope you enjoy WrestleMania. Keep your eyes peeled for the predictions that are going to come out from Dan in the next week or so. And also keep your eyes open for a Stand Deliver show, preview show. which I will do on either Sunday or Monday, even if it's a very quick half an hour blast through of the card. It certainly deserves it. Some great matches there. But for now, make sure you've hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button for both Wrestling Royalty and Gimme a Hull Yeah. There's not much else left to say other than he's been Dan. I'm Andy. This has been Wrestling Royalty. Gimme a Hull Yeah. We're out of here. See you soon, guys.